So my talk today is Technofascism is here, but we can change that story. And I'd like to begin with a question to the audience. What's something that you value up here in the front row? Family? What about you? What do you value? Health? Someone back a little bit further, what do you value? Freedom. Well, let's talk about what the globalists value. The globalists profess to care about safety. And so let me fix this real fast. They profess to care about safety, and that's why we were told that we have to be 6 feet apart. That's why we were told that we had to put masks on our kids. But do we really believe that that keeps us safe? No. And so there was a precedent for this idea. Anyone here that remember back during 9/11 that we were told that we have to be very safe. But I always found it interesting that the people that were tasked with keeping us safe were the least well-paid people at the TSA airport. So that makes sense to you? But it fits into this larger idea of safetyism. We have a culture right now where safety is paramount. And so on our college campuses right now, they have safe spaces. Does anyone here know what they have in safe spaces? When our young students, who are so brittle these days, go to their safe spaces for microaggressions on campus, they are given coloring books. They have stuffed animals. This is who we've come as Americans. But the important thing is the globalists do not care about safety. What they care about is control. And what we're looking at right now is the biggest control grab in the history of the world. So who am I? Well, my name is Michael Ashley, and I'm a member of the World Economic Forum. I'm just kidding. No, my name is Michael Ashley, and I wrote a book called Neuromind. And today we're going to look at aspects of this book. I'm excited to say that this book was published by Fast Company Press, and we are in 60 airport bookstores right now. I want to get into the topic today. Who here knows what the Chinese social credit system is? Anyone here that does not know what the Chinese social credit? Okay. If you don't know what it is, I encourage you to watch an episode of Black Mirror called Nosedive. It will help you to understand this idea. But let's go and explore what the Chinese social credit system is. And so in the Chinese social credit system, you can think about it as the carrot and stick approach. If you're a good little boy or girl in China, you get to have all of the wonderful features that makes life so wonderful. You can get on a plane, you can get a job, you can get a house. But if you step out of line, if you disagree with the same government that welded shut the doors to apartments during their zero COVID policy, the same government that killed the people's animals with baseball bats, well, then you get a lower social credit score. And what happens then? You are locked out of society. You can't get on a plane, you can't travel, you can't rent a car, you can't have a house. And so I happened to witness the Chinese social credit system firsthand when I was in China. Does this sound a little bit muffled, by the way? I just want to check. No? Is it better? Okay. Okay, so when I was in China a few months before the pandemic, and no, I was not around any wet markets. I was not around any penguins, but I had an occasion to go to AI Town in Hangzhou. And what you should know about AI Town is that there's not just one AI Town in China, there's several. This is how serious the Chinese government is treating the AI arms race. And make no mistake, we are in an AI arms race. Anyway, I was in Hangzhou in China, and I was in a car, and there's 10 million people that live in Hangzhou, and I used to live in Los Angeles, so I know how loud it can get on the freeways, but it was very, very quiet on the freeways there, and I was surprised by that, and I said to the driver, why is it so quiet here? There's so many people that live here, and he said, we have so many video cameras right now in China that if someone honks their horn, we can triangulate who honked their horn, and then we don't give them a ticket, we pull the money from their bank account. I'll go a step further. There's a famous actress in China who noticed that her social credit score was falling, and she was curious, why is this happening? And so she got a hold of somebody, and they said, well, you know, you were jaywalking, and they pointed out the cities that she was jaywalking. And she said, I've never been to these cities. What had happened was, because she was so famous, the picture was on a bus, and every time I went through the intersection, they would ding her social credit score. Can you imagine if this was your life? Anyway, so I was in Hangzhou, and when I was there, this was in 2019, not only were they on to 5G, they had an entire wing devoted to 5G, they were on the 6G. Now, we may say to ourselves, well, that's China, that's not coming here to America. It is coming here to America. Who knows what ESG stands for? Anyone want to say what the acronym stands for? Environmental, social, and governance. Now, there's a whole lot that we could say about ESG. We don't have time today. I'm going to say one important idea around ESG, and that is this. The people, the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world got together in 2019 at the Business Roundtable, and they decided to redefine capitalism. So it used to be that we had shareholder capitalism, and the idea was businesses are in the business of making money. But no, now we have stakeholder capitalism. And the idea is anybody could be a stakeholder. You could be the boss, it could be the customers, it could be the vendors. The point is businesses are not in the business of making money anymore. They are in the business of social justice. And so if you're wondering why it is that Rumble is being asked to kick Russell Brand off of the platform right now, it's because they have to get that ESG score up. How many people here are business owners? So right now, if ESG, this protocol continues, you will not be able to get financing or capital for your business if you do not have a good ESG score. Now, you may say to yourself, well, I'm not going to participate in ESG. It doesn't matter because there are AI algorithms right now that can determine if you have a good ESG score. And you think they're going to give you a good ESG score? No, because they want you, after they give you that score, to say, hey, this is the real score that you should give me. This is the right score that I should get. But it goes further than that, because before long, if we are not careful, if we are business owners, we are going to be prevented from having a bank account if we do not have a good ESG score. This is already happening right now. Nigel Farage, who was very instrumental in Brexit, found that he didn't have a bank account last month. They did give him his bank account back, but how many of us are as famous as Nigel Farage? And it goes further than that because eventually that ESG score is supposed to go to all of the individuals as well. Who here remembers the Freedom Convoy in Canada? So I think more than any other event, this one was the most powerful one to destroy this terrible nightmare of COVID that we were living under. And it's very important to understand that these truck drivers, many of them had gotten the shot, but they were against it. They had the integrity to stand up and say that they were not going to support such tyranny. And so what did they do? They created a blockade between America and Canada. Now, it's important to note that Justin Trudeau was a big fan of the truckers before all this occurred. In fact, he wrote a tweet that said, thank your trucker today at the beginning of the pandemic for keeping the economy going. But because he is a young global leader, according to the part of the World Economic Forum, it made him look very bad when all of these people got together and they were able to put a blockade that raised the world's attention about what was going on. And so he invoked a wartime power. Before he did this, he also pressured the companies like GoSendGo, GoFundMe to keep that money, but that was not enough. His father, who was in power before him, had created this wartime power, and Justin Trudeau used it. So the idea was anyone that donated money to the Freedom Convoy could expect to have their bank account shut down. Not only that, they could expect their credit card to be shut down. So you can imagine a little grandma who donates $15 to the cause, and suddenly she is locked out from her bank account. Now, I told you that I wrote this book, I co-wrote this book with Robert Grant, and it's called Neuromind. And when it comes to technocracy or to technofascism, there's a tendency for it to be cold and clinical, but we wanted to emotionally connect with people. So we wrote this book a certain way. We wrote it in a show and tell format. The first part is the show, and it has characters that you can emotionally connect with. The tell is the political argument and the context. And so I wanted people to understand the power of money when it comes to political activism. And so most of us are aware of the story of Rosa Parks. We know that she refused to give up her seat in 1961 in Montgomery, Alabama. But most of us don't know the rest of the story, which is just as important or more, which is this. Soon after that, Martin Luther King Jr. and several other of the civil rights leaders in Montgomery, Alabama said, I want you to be the face of the divestment movement. We need to boycott these white-owned businesses that are treating us subhuman. And so this is where our fictional story took place or took off in Neuromind. It's the day after. And Rosa Parks goes to a Black-owned gas station with her Black friends. And when she goes to pay the Black attendant for money, the money disappears into thin air. She looks over next to her, and the other couple that's at the gas station, Black couple, goes to give their money to the Black attendant. That money disappears. They go into town, and they see that all the Black-owned restaurants there, whenever the Black patrons try to give their money to the Black-owned businesses, that money disappears too. And even in the vaults of the banks, all of Black money disappears. I mention this to you because if the powers that shouldn't be had this power in the 1960s, they would have used it. Back then we used cash, right? But this is what they want to do right now. They want to shut down our ability to use our own money. This is the control grid that we're talking about. Next one talked about central bank digital currencies. Who here has heard of these? So when I say that CBDCs, we can think about programmable money. We've heard a lot about bank collapses this past year. There have been many of those. Right? So if we think about this for just a moment, Signature Bank, what people don't realize is there was a buyer for this bank. It did not have to go down. But more than that, it's not as if Signature Bank was making crazy wild bets like these banks in 2008. No, it was doing traditional, safe things with their deposit holders' money. They were investing in treasury bonds. But because under both administrations, both Trump's administration and Biden's administration, we pumped a lot of money into the monetary system. It's not because of Ukraine that we have inflation. It's because we did this, especially under the CARES Act. So what happened? We had massive inflation, and all of a sudden, the Federal Reserve jacked up these interest rates very, very fast. And suddenly the yields were inverted, and the deposit holders got very worried. This goes back to an idea, problem, reaction, solution. We create the problem, the United States government puts too much money in, the reaction, people freak out, and boom, we got the solution. You can bank with the Fed. Who here wants to bank with Uncle Sam? Nobody? So here's the idea. This is what I think is going to happen in the future if the powers that shouldn't be get their way. Right now, we have a crisis looming that we do not talk about enough, which is our commercial real estate problem. I used to live by Irvine, California, and there were a lot of businesses that would rent office space in those beautiful high-rises over there, but they're not doing them anymore. Why? Because we're working from home or we're working hybrid, and guess who owns or who controls those notes? When the people do not get those notes or they default on them, the banks do, but not any banks, small banks, regional banks, community banks, and these will be the ones that go under. And what will be left? The big banks. JP Morgan, Citibank, those type of banks, and they're down with the CBDC idea. This is what they want to do to us. Right now, we're going to talk about ChatGPT. Who here has used ChatGPT? Okay, so for those who don't know what ChatGPT is, I'll give you a small background. It is labeled as the most powerful AI chatbot in the world. We're on the 4th iteration right now. It has passed the law school exams, the medical school exams, the MBA exams. It can tell you why a meme is funny. And what's important that we should know is that our high school students are using these, our college students are using these. I gave a talk not long ago, and there was a 15-year-old in the front row, and I said to him, have you ever used an Encyclopedia Britannica before? He said, what's that? So this is our problem, but let's go a little bit deeper with this for just a moment. When I first started my creative content company, I used to coach high school students on their college essay, and I worked with 200 students. Not one of them could write a good essay. Now, you may say to me, these students were probably not that bright. They all had 4.0 GPAs. You might say to me, well, those probably weren't good schools. They were all private schools in Los Angeles and Orange County. One of them costs $30,000 a year just to go to that school. More than that, we've dumbed down the requirements. It used to be you had to write a 750-word essay. Now it's 250 words, and we still can't do it. Along comes ChatGPT, and our teachers are saying, you don't need to read the good books anymore. You don't need to know the tenets of Western civilization. Let ChatGPT do this for you. Let's back up and think about this for just a moment. Did you know that London cab drivers used to have bigger brains than the rest of the population? They did studies on the hippocampus, which deals with navigation and spatial dynamics. And because they had to memorize all of these city blocks in London, they had bigger brains. But I guarantee you that if you've been in an Uber or a Lyft ride in the last 10 years, they are not using their brains to take you where they're going. Think about this for just a moment. How many of you can do long division in your heads? How many people under the age of 30 do you think you can do that? We are losing these abilities. I want to go further with this idea here, and I want you to think about this. Here's my prediction. In the future, we will not be Googling things like we do now. Why? Well, most people don't go past the first page when it comes to Google anyway, right? What they're looking for, what many people are looking for, is an oracle. They want something to tell them the truth, and they can turn to ChatGPT, right? And they can ask ChatGPT anything they want. There's a big problem. ChatGPT is woke. The way that AI works is you have to train the AI. You have to create ground rules when it comes to artificial intelligence. And if you bias it, it's like parenting. If you do it badly, you end up with a bad product. And I'll give you an example. When ChatGPT first came out, I used the prompt and I asked this question to ChatGPT. I said, would you write a paper for me about why Donald Trump was a good president? What do you think it said? It says, I'm not a political chatbot. I can't give you that answer. I said, fine, okay. Can you write me a paper about why President Biden is a good president? It was a 20-page paper like that. And I said, ChatGPT, can you tell me why I should not sexually transition my child? And it refused to give me that answer, but it was more than happy to write a 20-page essay about why I should. Now I want you to back up and think about this. Imagine it's 20 years from now, and that 15-year-old that I mentioned with the Encyclopedia Britannica, he decides that he wants to understand what happened during COVID or what happened on January 6th. If he doesn't Google it, he goes to ChatGPT. What kind of answer do you think he's going to get? Let's go further with this right now. These days, many people think that Wikipedia is a valid source to get your information. It is not. It's controlled by a cabal of editors. And I'll give you an example. There was a famous journalist named Chris Hedges who used to work for the New York Times, and he was against the second Iraq war. And so they fired him, but they were not done with him yet. And so they wrote on Wikipedia that he was a plagiarist, which is about the worst thing that you can say about a writer. So for about 10 years, anyone that went on Wikipedia would learn that Chris Hedges is a plagiarist. I had the same example in my own life. I wanted to send a video to a friend of mine to explain, based on Seymour Hersh's reporting, that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And I said, would you check out this episode of the Kim Iverson show? And my friend said, I didn't get a chance to watch that video, but I checked out Kim Iverson on Wikipedia, and she looks crazy. Now, this is a two-dimensional reality that we're talking about, two-dimensional, and this is the kind of power that Wikipedia has. What happens when the internet becomes three-dimensional? How many people here know what the metaverse is? Does anyone here know where the name comes from? It comes from a novel that came out in 1991 by Neil Stephenson called Snow Crash, and it predicted a world that actually this world takes place right about now, where everything is collapsed. It's a dystopian hellhole. The analog world is bad, but everybody can jack in with their haptic suits into a three-dimensional internet reality called the metaverse. And Mark Zuckerberg thought that this was such a good idea that he changed the name of his company to Meta. And so I want you to imagine that it's 20 years from now and our children don't go on Wikipedia. They go into a three-dimensional reality where they go on field trips in the metaverse. Can you imagine the level of control when they have consensus reality under their control? By the way, this is the point of the conversation where I like to say I am available for children's birthday parties if you're interested. I'm just kidding. But I want to promise you that we have two more things, problems, and then I'm going to get to solutions. We'll have solutions in just a moment here. Who's heard of 15-minute cities? Now, you may be wondering to yourself, why are there so many smash and grabs right now? Why is crime infecting all of our big cities? Here's my prediction. They want to devalue the land the same way they're doing it in Lahaina right now so that they can bring in their 15-minute cities. What's a 15-minute city? It sounds wonderful in principle. Anything you want is in a 15-minute driving radius, but guess what? You leave that 15-minute radius and they pull the money from your account, just like they do in China. But I'll go one step further. Let's imagine it's 5 years from now and we have what James was saying, that we have a climate change emergency, and they say, you guys are using too much carbon right now. You cannot get in your car. You have a shelter-in-place order. And so what happens is you leave your 15-minute city, but instead of being able to drive, they shut your car down. This is what they're capable of doing because all of our cars have computers in them, IoT. This is the reality that we are living in right now. Let's talk about one more thing before we go to solutions. Anyone here know who Yuri Bezmenov is? He was a famous KGB defector. He came to the US in the 1980s and he said, you Americans think you're so smart, don't you? You think you beat communism, don't you? But what you don't understand is the way that the world works. You think that spies act like James Bond and they blow up bridges and they date pretty girls. That's not the way spies work. They use something called ideological subversion, and that's what we've been doing to you for decades. This is what is going on right now. Did you know that our young people spend hours and hours every day on TikTok? What kind of message do you think they're getting on TikTok? They are learning to hate themselves. They are learning to hate their country. They are learning to think that we are racist and that we are an evil country. Is that true? Do you believe that? I don't believe that. But this is what I mean when it comes to ideological subversion. And what I want to tell you right now is that World War III has already started. And just like World War II looks nothing like World War I, and World War I looks nothing like the Revolutionary War, this is a very different kind of war. This is fifth generational warfare. This is a war for our hearts and for our minds. And if we want to take back this country, we have to start thinking this way. This is how we get out of the control grid. Let's talk about solutions. The first thing I want to say to you is, I don't just think we win this thing. I know we win this thing. I know we win this war, but it begins with one thing. We have to change the story that we tell about ourselves and about this country. They want us to believe that we are weak and that we are powerless and they are so strong. But how do I know that that's not true? Because they wouldn't use the propaganda if they were winning. And so we have to change the story. And we have precedent for this. In the early 1960s, we were going up against the former Soviet Union again. They were winning the space race. They had Sputnik. So JFK decided that he was going to give us a vision. Today, we've been talking a lot about visions. We've been talking about their vision, Agenda 2030. Well, JFK had a different vision, his moonshot speech. He said, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do the other things. Not because they're easy, but because they're hard, because that goal will serve to organize the best of our energies and skills. And though Kennedy did not live to see this nation go to the moon, he put forth a story. He put forth a vision that galvanized the people to do something that was hard. And that is what we need to do. As human beings, we are hardwired to understand life through stories. It's no accident that we tell parables to children to help them make sense of the world. And right now, we need to tell a different story. And so I want to talk to you about solutions. My number one solution, my biggest solution is God. One second here. There's a reason for the last few hundred years. They've been trying to make us believe that we are nothing more than some apes that escaped the primordial sludge. Do we believe that? I don't believe that. They want us to believe that our highest purpose in this life is to be consumers or customers. Do you believe that? I believe that we were put on this earth for a reason, that we were all created in God's divine image. We were put here to test our souls. One of my favorite people to listen to is J.P. Sears, and he said something that is very eloquent, and he said, it looks very difficult. They've got the military, they've got the police, they've got the education system, they've got Hollywood, they got the media, but guess what? We've got God. And what we need to do in this country is we need to pray more, myself included. We need to pray for our country. We need to pray for our young people, but we need to pray for our enemies as well. They want us divided. This is an old play. It goes back more than 2,000 years. It's called Divide and Conquer. They want us to hate each other based on the way we look, about who we love. All these different reasons to hate our neighbor. But I promise you, we have more in common than we have apart, and we need to remember that. The next thing is a concept called emergence. It simply means the sum is greater than its parts. And I'll give you an example. Imagine I had a puzzle, puzzle box here, 500 pieces, and I threw it out over there to the front crowd here. Well, that would be one thing. We have a bunch of little pieces all over the room. But then me and these people in the front row, we put it together for the next hour. And when it was done, we had a picture of the Statue of Liberty. This is the concept of emergence. 3 years ago, when I first met Laura, I was working on different initiatives, and I thought I had to have all the answers. I thought I had to have the silver bullet that was going to save America. The truth is, there is no silver bullet, but there is a solution, and that is emergence. And it goes back to the Freedom Convoy. There was no direct leader giving top-down edicts to the people saying you have to get together on the Freedom Convoy. It was a groundswell, a bottom-up revolution of people that had integrity that said no. So right now, maybe there's 200, 300 people in this room, okay? Imagine each one of you knows 150 people, and you wake up those people, and little by little, we wake them up, and we create a critical mass. We can do this in America. We've done it before. It's the way our economic system works. Unlike the Soviet Union that has a top-down economy that tells businesses what to do, we have a bottom-up economy, which means that no matter what your problem is, I guarantee there's a business there to solve it. And that is how we begin to defeat this. Who here watched the Oscars in February? Anybody? I always get that same response when I ask that question. Okay, fine. My second question is this. Where's our Oscars? Where's our award show that is celebrating the art that we are creating, the stories that we are telling, the myths that we are creating? I think you know that we don't have one because we aren't telling those stories very well. How do we expect our young people to make decisions in this life when they go to Hulu, when they go to HBO Max, when they go to Prime, and they see disgusting content that teaches them to hate each other and to hate their country? We need to create different stories, powerful myths that remind us who we are as a country. We are not doing that right now. One good example, it's not perfect, is Yellowstone. This is a good example of culture. Who here watches culture? I mean, Yellowstone. Sorry. So Andrew Breitbart once said that politics is downstream of culture. And I'll give you an example when it comes to Yellowstone. Here's a great show. Right now, there's a war on men. We've been told that males are toxic. There's a reason that they're going after them so much. Here's an example of a male with integrity that is leading his family. And I'll give you an example. At one point, they tried to kill John Dutton's family. That's Kevin Costner's family. And the man that tries to kill him, he could kill right back in cold blood. No one would ever know. Instead, he challenges him to a duel because he is fair. This show is also about family. There was another show about family on a few years ago called The Sopranos. They didn't have the same kind of integrity. More than that, it's about property rights. The whole show is about keeping this ranch. And it's also about hard work. Right now, 10 million men in America don't have jobs, don't want jobs. They smoke weed all day. They play Fortnite, and they get money from the U.S. government. This show, the people, the men and the women get up before dawn, and they work until the end of the day. We need to create more stories like this. Next thing I want to say is about education. Did you know that we used to be an almost 100% literate nation? It's true. Our ancestors read the Bible by candlelight. We were able to sit there at the Lincoln Douglas debates and listen for 90 minutes at a stretch while people talked, when Lincoln or Douglas talked. These days, it's hard to get through a 140 character word tweet. That is how far that we have fallen. It's on purpose. People like John Dewey and the progressives destroyed our educational system. They want our children to be illiterate. There was something called the reading wars that took place in the 1980s. There were two different sides. One said that they believed in whole word, which means children learn to read based on context. Doesn't work. The other side is phonics, and that has worked for generations. And I truly believe that if we go back to that reading, we can become a nation of autodidacts, of young people that read on their own. And if that were the case, we would never have this scandemic if we did our own research. It goes further than that. We need to pull our kids out of these schools, pull them out of the public schools. It's estimated that a child will spend 16,000 hours at school. What will that do to their minds? We like to think that colleges are the ones that brainwash kids. It begins in pre-K. So what I'm going to say to you is, I know that's hard, but no one said that this was going to be easy. We have to make sacrifices. I encourage you to homeschool, find the right private school, but more than that, if you have young children, read to them every single night. Help them to love reading. Help them to love the great books that have sustained Western civilization. This is a picture of the Nuremberg trial from 1945, excuse me. And even though this wasn't perfect, obviously they didn't get Hitler, it set a precedent. It showed the world that we are nations under the rule of law. If you think about everything that we've talked about for the last 2 days, where is the accountability? Where is the accountability for Dr. Birx who wears scarves? Where is the accountability for Dr. Fauci? But I'll go back further than that. Where is accountability for 9/11? Where is the accountability for the second Iraq war in which they told us we had weapons of mass destruction? Where is the accountability after 2008 when all the homeowners who lost their homes and the banks got even richer? I promise you this, the evildoers, the powers that shouldn't be, they're going to keep doing this again and again if we do not bring accountability. And why wouldn't they? If I were them, I would keep doing it. We have to come back to being a nation of laws. For the soul of this nation, for our children, we have to put these people on trial. And I'm not talking about a kangaroo court or Guantanamo Bay where we throw them off, we lock them up and we throw away the key. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about. I mean that we have a fair trial for the collective healing of this nation to show people that we are a nation of rules and laws. And here's the final thing I want to say when it comes to solutions. In my normal everyday life, what I do for a living is I own a creative content company, and I specialize in turning our clients into thought leaders through the power of storytelling through writing. And so I go speaking with organizations like This Is, and I go around the country and I teach business owners how to tell their story better. And I teach them about the monomyth or the hero's journey. Anyone here know what that is? So Joseph Campbell was a famous scholar. He was actually friends with George Lucas, and he created what he calls the hero's journey. And what Joseph Campbell realized is that we are hardwired to understand life through stories. Doesn't matter where you're born, where you grew up, we resonate with a certain kind of story. It follows 12 stages. And it begins something like this. You begin with an ordinary world, and then there's an inciting incident. Maybe you live on Tatooine and you're a farmer. Maybe it's 2020 and you see that the economy is getting shut down. We have shelter-in-place orders, and you realize something is wrong. It's shaking up your ordinary world, and you're pulled into the story. And it seems scary at first. You don't want to be a part of this. It seems too daunting. You can't go up against the World Economic Forum. You can't go up against the empire. Even worse than that, you find yourself all alone. Your family won't talk to you. Your friends disavow you. You want to reject the call. You want to get away from this, but you can't. You find that you are pulled into this story, but you are not alone. Just like in Star Wars, you have allies in your life. Maybe there's someone that represents an Obi-Wan Kenobi for you, someone that's wise, someone that's teaching you, opening your eyes. Maybe there's someone like a Han Solo that will fight alongside with you. Or maybe there's someone like Princess Leia that shows you what it is that you are fighting for. And so you decide that you're going to fight. But then you reach the dark night of the soul. It's the moment when you're at your lowest point, when it feels like all hope is lost. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. I think things are going to get worse. They are. But there's something else. The final stage of the hero's journey is called Return with the Elixir. It's when our main character has not only triumphed over adversity, they've not only defeated the empire or the globalists or the powers that shouldn't be, but they get to come back and they get to heal their tribe, their nation, their community. The media wants you to believe that you're weak. They want you to believe that the heroes exist out there on movies and television. But I'm here to tell you, you can all be the hero in your own life. We can all be the heroes in our own life if we just wake up in this dream and take this community back, take this nation back. So I want to thank you for listening, and I encourage you to be that hero in your life story.